In the same respect, there's a lot of people who are impatient for information, and rightfully so. I get it. We're human beings. We want our information. We want it now. And why are you holding back? But sometimes you have to let the right people in the right positions digest information, right? Sometimes you can't expect a 10-course meal to be digested all in one bite. It just can't happen. And for some people, this UAP issue, they're really learning about it for the first time, despite what they may have seen on popular TV or something like that, or maybe on a movie. This is really the first time they're being told, hey, listen, Jack or Jane, this is a serious topic. This is something that your Department of Defense has been tracking. You probably want to learn a little bit more about what's going on and what they're seeing.
So I think it's important as we build a compelling case that we can tell, keeping in mind that even the brief I'm giving you today, there are going to be people, maybe even in this audience, but there are going to be people, if this goes out, that are going to scrutinize every single word I say. And they are waiting for me to mess up. One wrong word that violates my NDA and I go to jail. You won't see Lou for a very long time. So I have to be careful. I will not violate my NDA, not because I'm afraid of jail, just because I'm a patriot. I want to tell you, I love my country, so I'm not going to violate it. But I am going to try to have a conversation in a way that gets everybody involved, and that information comes to you the right way. Because it shouldn't be coming from Lue Elizondo. It shouldn't be coming world according to Lou, and this is everything, just blah. It should be coming through the government channels, the right channels, because ultimately that's why I really left the Department of Defense. I wanted to fix it. I didn't want to ruin it. These are good people. Most of those people there are my friends or foxhole buddies or combat with. They're good, they're loyal, they're patriots. Yeah, there's dysfunction in the government. I got it, we all know it, it's there. But there's also a lot of goodness.
Some people think that I'm coming out and, I'm a whistleblower or I'm leaking information. I'm neither of those. I'm not trying to embarrass the U.S. government. I'm not trying to provide information that's sensitive or classified in an unauthorized manner to the American people in the world. That's not what this is about. I am simply continuing the very mission that I was given back in 2008 and then later on in 2010. I'm just finishing the mission. I'm seeing it to its logical conclusion. It just so happens to be that I was in some assignments that exposed me to some very extraordinary moments in history, and I'll leave it at that.
Do you think that you have seen evidence that if that evidence was leaked, that it would change everything and as far as what people think about UFOs?
I think it would change the conversation. Changing the way people think is something entirely different. And this is something
right.
that I've learned through the course of many years of experience. You can present somebody with absolute facts, and at the end of the day, you're not going to change their mind necessarily. This is a gradual conversation, and this is one of the reasons why I said disclosure is a process and not an event. You don't just present somebody information and say, oh, aha, okay, I'm going to change my entire paradigm of thinking. That's not the way we're wired as human beings. It takes time. It takes the ability to contemplate the facts and process those facts, and then have the courage to be able to draw new conclusions. Right? We tend to be we don't have a whole lot of humility as a species. We tend to think we have all the answers, and so when you are challenged with new information that challenges your status quo, that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. And I'm not blaming anybody for it. It's part of the human condition. We all have these biases that we bring along with us through life, and whether it's with religion or governmental organizations or institutions or whatever, that's kind of the way we are. And I do think that as more information comes out, it's going to continue to drive the conversation. But ultimately, it's not videos and it's not pictures that are going to convince people. It's going to be dialogue, discussion, and conversation with each other. Because at the end of the day, you can always come up with some sort of crazy, prosaic explanation for something. I don't care if I have a picture of this thing landing on the White House lawn. There's going to be people out there that are going to provide contrary information and data that will argue against that. So again, I this is why I tell people, look, this is more than just pictures and videos to satisfy people's curiosity. This is a much bigger question we're dealing with here. We're dealing with something that may change the very paradigm in which the human species looks at itself and views itself in the universe. Again, that's a whole fundamental different conversation than just some pictures of some lights in the sky. And I think that's why it's so important that folks like you, Martin, and your audience are willing to have a conversation about this topic in an elevated manner, right? In a way that avoids the nonsensical stereotypes of Elvis on the mothership and tinfoil hats and all that other garbage that has traditionally been associated with this topic and been considered fringe, when in reality, we may be dealing with one of the greatest discoveries of our species.
If a government is responsible for some sort of malfeasance, are people entitled to be whistleblowers for the greater good of humanity, even if it embarrasses the institution in which that individual serves? And my response to that is, it all depends on how you do it. Okay. What Edward Snowden did was wrong. He took information that was highly classified and he provided it to the Russians. He didn't provide it necessarily to the American people in a way using Whistleblower Protection Act, which is there specifically for that, or using your IG, Inspector General channels, or Office of Professional Responsibility, or these mechanisms that have been built into the federal system precisely for that reason, for addressing malfeasance. Okay, there are mechanisms set up. When you take information and you now run to the neighbor's house with that information, and now the neighbors are aware of what's going on before even you've had a chance to address it within the family, I disagree with that. I'm not saying that if there's some malfeasance that it's not addressed. We have a moral obligation to address it. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. It's not really with malfeasance, but it's with stovepipes and bureaucracy. I've chosen this route because I'm not a traitor. I'm not looking to disparage or hurt my country. I'm looking to help it. And sometimes you have to be vocal and you have to be outspoken to make changes. I'm not opposed to that. I think that's healthy. That's part of a democracy. What I oppose is the violation of an oath that someone takes to serve their country. And that oath is, by the way, a lifelong commitment. When I take that oath to defend my country from all enemies, foreign and domestic, that's not just an oath that I'm saying to the government. It's an oath I'm saying to myself. It's a promise. It's an oath to the American people that I have promised to give my life, if necessary, defending the goals and the ideals of this nation. And I'm not going to violate that just because people want to know information. There's a way to still get the information out and get the change you're looking for without running to a foreign adversary and giving them all your secrets. That's my problem with Snowden. Snowden wasn't a whistleblower. He was a spy. And had he gone through the normal channels, we would not be having this conversation. You'd probably be hailed a hero. Yeah. But the problem is he chose not to.
The next question comes from Mick West. I'd like to ask Lue Elizondo, I'll just read this verbatim. If he really thinks this is non-human technology that can revolutionize the world and maybe include contact with aliens and extra-dimensional beings and so on, why is he so concerned with NDAs? Surely for the good of humanity, he should release the evidence that he has.
Surely for the good of humanity. And then he can go ahead and pay for my mortgage. He can put my kids through school. He can come visit me every day and give me soup while I'm behind bars, spending the next 40 years of my life, doing a service for somebody else. I've already put my neck on the line. So all due respect, Mr. West, if why don't you? There's nothing stopping you. Why don't you do it? I've already put my career, my reputation, and credibility on the line. I've already foregone my retirement and my pension. How much more else do you expect me to sacrifice? You want me to put myself up on a cross and nail myself to it, just because? I think we've come pretty far so far. I think I haven't had to go to jail, and we've come pretty damn far in the last 3 years. So I guess a simple "you're welcome" is probably, would be my response.
Are there whistleblower protection acts that you could reveal information under?
Oh, this is part of the IG process. This is part of Congress. There are people that I can speak with without violating my non-disclosure agreement that can further the conversation. And this is what we're trying to exercise. I mean, I've tried to be as clear as I can with our roadmap moving forward without jeopardizing it. But if people have noticed one thing about me is that I'm deliberate. I don't do anything haphazard. So all the stuff that people are now seeing with conversations in Congress and IG, do people honestly think that's just some sort of coincidence? I mean, guys, look, if you look at what I've been saying the last 3 years, you're going to see a pattern. It's very clear. You're going to see everything I've said has come to fruition, lock, stock, and barrel. We're trying to do this the right way. And as I said before, there's a difference between doing things right and right now. And I prefer to do things right. This is a process. I've told people from day one, if you're expecting instant gratification, then, go take up something else. Go take up finger painting. Don't do this, because this is going to be a long-term effort. And it's every day the due diligence of what we're doing, but it's making a difference. Just look at the last 3 years, how far we've come. We have an official UAP task force. We have the government admitting that UFOs are real. We have Congress being briefed at the classified level. They're all coming out saying this is important. We actually have the task force now providing information to Congress in a 180-day report. We have other countries like Japan coming out and reaching out and wanting to share their information with us. I mean, man, how much more do you want in 3 years? So again, forgive me for being a little bit, testy about this.
That's
I think
fine.
a lot
Do
of
questions
people
like that
this.
annoy you? Do you get them frequently and you're tired of them?
Well, you know what? It's armchair quarterbacking. It's easy for people to sit back. I see it all the time on social media. Just violate your NDA, Lou. It's okay. You go to jail for us. It's okay. But they're not willing to do, 1/10 of that sacrifice for this effort. If you ask them, hey, get off your ass and go talk to your congressman, or start doing research and start going out and being a force multiplier for this effort. They want, I'm too tired. I got too much go. I'm too busy. Well, I got my family to take care of. Well, so do I. I'm not different. Why am I being held to a different standard? Why am I have to be, the person coming out there and just say hell to everybody and wind up having to go run and hide in some foreign country and never come back to my country? I love my country. By the way, my non-disclosure agreement I took was a promise I made to the American people, not my government. And so I think it's really disingenuous to say, well, you can just break your promise this time for the truth. No, I can't. That's like saying, well, you can cheat on your wife only this time, or you can cheat on your family this time. It won't matter. Yes, it does matter. Every time matters. It's a promise. That's what a promise is. Either you're a man of your word or a woman of your word, or you're not. Otherwise, and they're called principles, and people fight and die for those principles. And I've seen people fight and die for those principles. They're not just something that you conveniently throw around. Oh, I promised to do this, and then really later on say, no, I don't really promise. That's not the way promises work. Those are the kind of people that don't survive in combat because people don't have your back. You swear an oath of an allegiance to do the right thing. That's what this is about. I don't understand people who can just say, hey, go ahead and break your promise this one time. I mean, what are you talking about? You'd never trust me again. I can't break this one time, because the one time I do, then I could do it 1,000 times. And at that point, I might as well throw in the towel. Mm-hmm. So anyways, and when you talk about these briefings being provided to senior members of our government, they're getting more compelling data, recognize that. And it's okay that if you're not getting the immediate answer you want right now, because this isn't, again, Burger King, this isn't have it your way and have it now. We're preparing an 8-course meal here because this topic deserves it. It demands it. It's important enough. The last thing we want to do is do some sort of half-baked disclosure. All of a sudden, you just kind of, here it is on the table. And, now what? You got a big mess on your hands. That's not helpful.
Security clearance. This is something a lot of people bring up as a source of frustration when you can't answer a question in the way that they might not like you to. Can you start off just by talking a little bit about your clearance that you have, why you still have it, and what exactly that means?
Yeah, sure. So security clearance is, I think, a lot of times overcomplicated. If people on the outside haven't spent any time in the government, there's this giant mystery behind, a security clearance and what it means and the type of access of information you have. Here in the United States, we have three classifications of if you will, information, besides unclassified. Unclassified isn't really a classification. It's just unclassified information. The three classifications are confidential, which is the first tier of information, secret, which is the second tier, and ultimately top secret information. Now, there's actually legal guidelines of what this information means. From a top secret perspective, that means if information were to get compromised and put out into the public sphere, if an enemy were to gain access to that information, it would cause, quote unquote, grave or exceptional damage to the United States national security. So that's in essence why we classify information, particularly to protect sources and methods. That's very important because a lot of times information in itself might be unclassified, but how you collect that information can be very, very sensitive. And so that's why we classify information the way we do. In my case, because I was in the intelligence community for so long, in order to have the job that I have, the government insisted all of us with that particular, if you will, expertise in counterintelligence, intelligence, human intelligence, you have to have a top secret security clearance, meaning that you have to go through an extensive background investigation, psychological evaluations, and polygraphs to get access to certain information within that caveat of top secret. And then within the top secret layer, think of a layer cake, maybe a wedding cake that's got many different layers of frosting throughout the cake. At the top secret level, people think, well, it's top secret information. That's it. Well, there's actually some sub-layers or strata, if you will, even within the top secret. And you have SCI, which is sensitive compartmented information. You have SAP information. And you've got these little cutouts that are within the top secret realm, but they are extremely nuanced, very, very sensitive. Again, because of the line of work that I was in, I was required to have that type of security clearance. When it comes to the UAP topic, when I am talking about information, a lot of it is unclassified. The problem is how that unclassified information was obtained. It was obtained through some very sensitive sources and methods. Obviously, we don't want as a nation to compromise those sources and methods. Otherwise, you can't use them ever again because you get compromised. Especially in the world of human intelligence, you're talking about people's lives. When you're collecting information from another human being that probably shouldn't be telling you that information, there's a level of trust there that has to be exercised. And really, to some degree, that person's life is now in your hands, because if the country that they're from finds out that they're sharing information with you, it could be, well, that's considered spying, technically, by a lot of other countries' rules and laws. So, in that shadowy world of intelligence and espionage, you have to have that level of security clearance. And there is a requirement. There's a if you will, an NDA, right? Non-disclosure agreement that you sign. And it's not like a company's non-disclosure agreement. It's far more comprehensive. It basically subjugates me to jail time. There are several acts like the U.S. Espionage Act, for example, that if I violate the trust and confidence that the U.S. government has bestowed into me, and let's not forget that trust and confidence is really a derivative of the people's trust and confidence, right? I represent the people of the United States. They have trusted me with that level of security clearance, knowing that I would not share certain information. And if I violate that, I can go to jail. I can be prosecuted. I can have a lot of things happening to me. Now, I think it's also important to say that when I tell people I can't discuss that because of my security clearance, I'm not saying that because I'm necessarily afraid to go to jail. I mean, obviously, I don't want to go to jail, but it's because it's for me, it's a sacred oath that I took, and that oath wasn't just to the U.S. government; it was to the American people. It's a bit like a marriage. When you make that oath till death do us part, it's an oath till death do us part, and it's not just to the partner you're making that commitment to. It's actually an oath you're making to yourself. So if I were to make an exception to that and violate that oath that I have sworn many, many years ago, everything else I've ever done is up for grabs too. I mean, if something that simple, my oath to the American people, can be violated that simply by saying, well, I'm going to let you know something, then everything that I've ever stood for before, whether it's going to war or conducting the operations I have on behalf of the American people, that is also up in question too. And that is also open up for questioning too. And so, I take my oath seriously. Ultimately, it's an oath I've made to the American people. It's the same oath that I've made to my daughters and my family, that when I say I take this responsibility seriously, I mean I take that responsibility seriously. I'm going to digress here just for a moment, because 3 years ago when I first came out, there's a lot of stuff I could have said up front that probably would have saved me a lot of grief, a lot of sharpshooting by a lot of people. But I'm not going to sell out individuals and sources that I've worked with in the government just to save my ass. I'm not that kind of guy. I never have been. I never will be. So, I know as more information comes to light, people are kind of frustrated saying, Lou, why didn't you just say this 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and all this guesswork that we had to do? Well, because I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not just going to go ahead and say something and compromise somebody else in the program just to save my credibility. That's not what this endeavor is about. It's not about satisfying the idle curiosity of people, and it's not about vindicating myself. It never has been. This is a much more profound journey about telling the American people the truth. And if that truth, the cost of telling the truth, is at my own expense, as I've said before, then that's an easy solution for me. I'll do whatever I have to do to have that conversation.
So I'd like to follow on from that. With that in mind, when you appeared on Fox News with Tucker Carlson, he asked if you believe the US government has debris from crashed UAP in its possession. Your response was, and I'll quote hopefully correctly here, simply put, yes. That's a big answer. How can you give that as an answer with that clearance in mind?
Well, because I'm not saying the specifics. I'm not saying where it is, where it's from, who collected it. Remember what he said. He said, do you believe that the U.S. government has material in its possession? Well, he's asking me my personal opinion. And I can provide my personal opinion in that regard. I'm allowed to, based upon the information I saw. I can say that because he's not asking me to say something to the effect of, for example, who collected the material? Where is it being stored? Under whose authorities and auspices? What are its capabilities? What is it specifically made out of? That's not what the question was. He just simply asked me, do you believe there is recovered material? Anything beyond that, other than what I believe, now becomes stated fact. And now I have to be careful, because that stated fact is based upon knowledge that I had as an employee of the U.S. government. And that's why I was very specific when I said, I have to be careful what I say here. I take a minute and I have to pause and I have to think about it, because, it's a very fine line. There's a ledge there, and I'm tiptoeing pretty close to that ledge. And one word, just one wrong word, and I'm going to be over the edge. And things can get very complicated for me.